Today on the Guitar Channel, we're checking out the Revelation Set from EMG. But considering you'll likely have some questions about the condition of this Les Paul, we're going to talk about that too. So first of all, let's talk about these pickups. The Revelation Set, or Rev Set for short, are passive humbuckers that feature Alnico 2 magnets and a medium hot output. EMG describes these pickups as having just enough give to deliver that classic sponginess passive players crave without the muddiness usually associated with old school PAF types. Opening up the manual reveals a DC resistance of 13.5 kiloohms in the bridge and 13.8 in the neck. On paper, this feels unusual. Sure, many of the original PAF sets and P90 sets had similar or identical output levels, but today it seems to be standard practice to wind the bridge a bit hotter, or a lot hotter in some cases, to compensate for the smaller string vibrations at that position. Now, of course, this is no accident. This set took 2 years to fully develop, and I'm sure they didn't just forget to throw a few more winds on the bridge. I can tell you that in my experience, once I got over the surprise of reading the spec and just spent time playing, it's not as odd as it reads. Most of us likely spend all our time on either the neck or the middle positions when playing clean, and both of those positions have plenty of warmth along with the expected clarity on clean settings. And under heavy distortion, most of us are also likely to spend most of our time on the bridge pickup anyway. In this scenario, the slightly marginal lower output in the bridge relative to the neck actually gives way to increased clarity. Chords ring out with a vintage sweetness but also a nice modern punch, and the neck being slightly hotter, I mean, we're literally talking about a fraction of a kiloohm here, but it works quite well for fluid lead lines under heavy distortion. I was initially reluctant to change the pickups in this guitar because it's so special, but I can thankfully say I'm very happy that I did. This guitar originally came with a 57 Classic at the neck and a 57 Classic Plus at the bridge. See, there's that hotter bridge setup that I referred to earlier. Okay, I'll move on. I discovered this guitar stringless and dusty sitting on a rack in my friend and luthier Tracy Longo's shop. As you can probably attest to, the overall condition raises more than a couple questions, which subsequently leads to more than a few answers. So this is a 2009 Les Paul Traditional that was originally Cherry Sunburst. Now, I wasn't there, so some of the following details may not be fully accurate, but this is how I understand it. This guitar was one of the victims of the 2010 Nashville flood. After sustaining that initial damage, it was deemed unsellable and sent to the Gibson Amphitheater in Universal City, where it was hung very crudely on the wall, supposedly behind one of the bars. Side note here, the Gibson Amphitheater was my all-time favorite venue in my 20s. It had a great sound, great atmospheres, and I have great memories of seeing some really cool shows, including Megadeth's 2012 Gigantor, as well as multiple Rush shows. If you've ever been, you know. Anyway, when the Gibson Amphitheater was closed in 2013, there were stories of people taking anything they could as mementos, including the seats, among other easily grabbed items. Someone somehow managed to grab this guitar, and somehow it found its way into Tracy's shop. His initial plan was to completely restore it to look exactly as it once did from the factory. As you can see, quite a bit of work was done before it entered my sights. By the time I took notice of it in 2015, it was repaired enough to be structurally sound and playable, but thankfully none of the cosmetic repairs had begun. As soon as I heard the story of this guitar, I immediately asked him how much. Now, we'll save the details of the transaction for another time, but needless to say, I got it home, strung it up, and plugged it in. I was honestly expecting either no sound, or at the very least, a bad sound, considering that all of these electronics had been underwater at some point. Instead, I was greeted with the best clean tone I have ever heard come out of my Orange Terror and Mesa 212. I had played Les Pauls before, I had heard 57 classics before, but at the risk of sounding a little too hocus pocus here, I had never heard a Les Paul sound like this. Clean, breakup, heavy distortion, it didn't matter. This guitar had, or has, a fullness and a sweetness to it that to this day I still can't replicate anywhere else. That tone, combined with the story, is what made me reluctant to change the pickups. And I'm sure many of you are screaming at me right now through your screens, but here's the thing. Yes, the Rev pickups sound a little different than the 57 classics, but the guitar overall still has that inexplicable mojo that it's always had. So, depending on how hippie we want to go with it, one or more of these things has to be at play here. Number one, Tonewood is a complete lie, and these Revelation pickups sound just as good as the originals. Number 2, Tonewood is a real thing, and this specific Les Paul with its chunky neck and heavy body are contributing to that sweeter tone. Or number 3, which is the hippiest sounding explanation and my favorite one of all. The circumstances this guitar endured, being underwater, getting bolted to a wall behind a bar, losing moisture and nitro while simultaneously absorbing years of vibrations bleeding out from some of the best acts around night after night, gave this instrument a particular vibe and a mojo that is just unmatched. Whatever you choose to believe, there's no denying that this guitar is special, and everyone who plays it agrees. Kirk Hammett may have Greenie, Neil Young may have Old Black, Joe Bonamassa may have the rest of them, but at least I have this one, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Just kidding, of course. Send me some pictures of your house or Tesla Cybertruck, and we'll talk. So hey, if you like this video, you know what to do. Give it a like, comment, maybe subscribe, whatever's clever. Either way, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.